Zoom recording. Great, awesome. Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining tonight. Let's go ahead and get started. I know that there's not a ton of people, more people should be coming soon, but why don't we go ahead and get started with attendance now? So I will pass it off to Vanessa.
One, we'll do our usual. Andrea Scarborough. I know you're here.
Present. I had to get to the unmute button. Present.
Bilal Key. Diane Song Yu. Gil Lopez. Janet Ferrara.
Here, present.
Jasmine McPherson. Jennifer Maldonado. Angela Moore. Catherine Savino. Mac Lawrence. Rachel Boglin.
I am here.
Richard Nunez Lawrence. Ruth Essa. Susan Latham. Toby Shepherd Block.
Present.
I think I see Susan and Mac joining us.
Yep.
Hey.
Sorry about that on the road, but I'm here.
Great. Thank you. Okay. And me, I'm here. Community Board 1, Antonella Di Severio. Community Board 2, Frank Wu or Laura Shepard.
Hi, I'm here. And then
Hi.
Roz is on from Community Board 2. Yep.
Great. Community Board 3, Megan Rockwell. Community Board 4, Carol Maholsky. Community Board 5, Walter E. Clayton.
I'm here.
Community Board 6, Katrina Schneiderman.
Here.
Okay, Community Board 7, James Servino. Community Board 8, Susan Cleary. Community Board 9, Regina Santoro. Community Board 10, Emily Chang. Is that a somebody or a sound? Sound, I think. Community Board 11, John Kelly. Community Board 12, Reverend Thorbs.
I'm here.
Community Board 13, no current representative. Community Board 14, no current representative. Chairs, Mary Arnold.
Here.
Okay. LIC Partnership, Charles Yu.
Yes, here.
Mr. G. Carding, Hannah Mitchell.
Here.
NYC H2O, Ryan Brenner.
I'm here.
Queens Botanical Garden, Evie Hansopoulos.
Here.
Queens Chamber of Commerce, Rona Davis. Queens County Farm Museum, Sarah Meyer.
Present.
Sutphin Boulevard Bid. Tully Environmental. Waste Management. And okay, then I see Bilal. Hi, Bilal. And I see Kat Serino. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Anybody else who might have missed roll call?
Yep, Susan Latham missed roll call.
Hi, Susan. Thank you. And I do see we have some guests, so welcome as well. And we do have a quorum.
Ryan, you're muted.
Yes, thank you. Just saw that. So wow, that's great. Thank you so much, Vanessa, and welcome everyone. While we have a quorum, because I know some people have to jump, there are a few voting items that we have. Let me put, I realized I did not send around the agenda, so I'm going to put the link in the chat now, so you can open it if you want to. We have a few voting items that I sent around, one of which was the proposed amendments to the bylaws that the bylaw committee has been working on. So I can pull that up now so that we can look at it. I don't know, does someone from the bylaws committee want to just briefly summarize what the changes are? Maybe Susan, since you led the discussion last time. And if people have questions, we can go over it. But if you just want to remind folks what we proposed.
Sure, I'm just pulling it up on my computer. So we had a discussion about it last week, and there were some changes to what the first proposals had been. And so under board membership, we have defined what members in good standing are. Under section 4, all members in good standing shall be eligible to vote on board business. A member shall be considered to be in good standing if they attend a minimum of 4 full board meetings within the prior 6-month period and actively participate in at least one committee and attend a minimum of half of all the committee's meetings with the prior 6-month period. We removed the other information about, what that means in terms of if they're not in good standing. And then we also, under section 7, the executive committee may recommend to the board the removal of any member who is not in good standing or for cause, which may include substantial non-attendance. Under officers, section 2, officers shall serve for 1 year or until succeeded by a duly elected successor or removed from office for cause, including neglect of duty in office, misconduct, or not attending executive committee meetings. The vote required to remove an officer is a majority vote of members in good standing when previous notice has been given. And I believe we also proposed in section 2 under article 7 meetings, the board shall have no fewer than 10 regularly scheduled meetings each calendar year. And I think the biggest issue that we had last time had to do with language around electronic voting. So we played with what the language was, and what we have now under section 5 is electronic voting may be used to vote on a motion that was seconded and discussed at a full board meeting that did not meet quorum requirements, or a motion that was seconded and discussed at any full board meeting when a subsequent motion passes to vote electronically to allow for further review outside of the meeting, or an urgent matter that arises between meetings and is discussed and voted on in a committee. For matters that arise between meetings, the full SWAB must be notified that the urgent matter will be discussed and voted on in the upcoming committee meeting with the intention of recommending the matter for an electronic vote. If the vote passes in committee, the chair of the committee must notify the chairperson, who will then call a vote of the full board. Electronic votes will be taken by email, and at least 24 hours shall be allowed for members to cast their ballot. So those are the substantial changes that we are recommending. They will allow us, it clarifies some things so that we can function as a committee, and it also allows us to vote on things between meetings, because sometimes if we don't have a quorum or for other reasons, that can be difficult to get something that needs to be done in a timely manner. Does anybody have questions? And I don't see anybody's hand up. And so what
Okay.
I am going to do is, does anyone have hands
Susan,
up?
sorry to interrupt you. A suggestion. When you were reading the section about electronic voting and you enumerated the 3 circumstances under which we would use it, you said one, or, but that's not the way it reads. I suggest that you
True.
substitute and for, rather, or for and, or if there's a space there. so that it reads the way you read it.
I think that might actually be, let me see, are you talking about, so this is section 5 here. Let me see if I can
Right.
zoom in some.
Yeah, I read it to
Here.
make it, to clarify without reading the numbers, used to vote on a motion, which is number 1, or a motion that
Right.
was seconded, or an urgent matter that arises between meetings.
So
I think
are you
it's
saying
better
or
that
instead of
way.
and?
Right.
Which actually makes sense, absolutely, Carol, because it would have to meet one of these requirements, not
Correct.
all 3 of them at the same time.
Correct.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Okay, so we'll make note of. Or, okay,
Then you, Ryan, did you
Yeah.
make put the or in between numbers 1 and 2 also?
yeah, so we'll do between 1 and 2 and 3.
And then 3, yeah,
Thank you, Carol. Good suggestion.
not a problem.
Does anyone else have any other questions? And I can't see everybody right now, so please just call out. Then if nobody else
I
has
have a
any,
question. Sorry,
Okay.
Susan.
I
It's
can't
Kat.
see anybody. so.
If somebody was planning on resigning or wanted to resign, should it be written in there like how to go about that or what needs to happen to actually leave the board?
That's a good question.
Like the
I-
formal, procedure? Thanks.
I think that was in the bylaws.
Yeah, I think
That-
that's in there.
Yeah, they have to write a
Yes,
letter.
right here. Yes, this is all that they need to do.
Thank you. I missed that.
No problem, no problem.
Any other questions or comments? Then if there are none, then I am gonna make a motion that we approve the revisions to the bylaws with the ors inserted instead of the ends. So I'm gonna put that motion on the table.
I second.
Great. So are there any discussion points? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 And any opposed? Any abstentions? Great, so the motion carries. This is very exciting, everyone. This has been a long haul. Thank you to the bylaws committee for working on these changes, and thank you all for your insight into the amendments. So with these, did I stop sharing my screen? Okay, good. Yeah. With these, I think we'll move quickly on to the next item and hold, or no, let's do the voting now that we have a quorum. I know some folks have to jump at 7. So if that, Charles, does that work for you? If we go through these all SWAB items and then you can
Yeah.
give your update. Perfect. Great.
Yeah, that's fine.
Oh, Matt's joining. So Mary, the legislative committee is working with the legislative committees of the other SWABs. There have been 2 items that we have to talk about. I don't know which one you'd want to talk about first.
I'd like to talk about the simpler one first.
Great. Okay.
Okay, and if you could let me share my
Yes.
screen.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so this is a request from all the SWABs that the extended producer responsibility legislation be treated as such. That's this one here. Can people see that then? It's just these 2 paragraphs. Okay. And this is how it reads. The solid waste advisory boards of Manhattan, Bronx, and Brooklyn and Queens recommend that packaging reduction and/or extended producer responsibility legislation not be included in New York State's fiscal year 2024 budget. This non-budgetary policy is too complex, and the results of which would be too far-reaching to adequately craft through the budget negotiation process. Packaging reduction is complex policy that deserves the full and transparent legislative process. The legislature should, after the state budget is adopted in April, deliberate and come to an agreed upon bill that includes the best elements of each of the current state Senate and any other forthcoming bills from the Assembly. And just to make this clear, it's a one-house bill. Right now, all of them are one-house bills. And then the Assembly has already decided it doesn't want to deal with this through the budget process. So this is not terribly controversial at this point. But that's the first thing to vote on.
So do folks have questions about this letter or what it's supposed to be doing?
You said the Assembly has it. Oh, I'm sorry. Evie has up her hand. My apologies.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, I thank you. The Assembly has it as a one-house bill? Does the
No,
Senate have-
the Senate has it as a
Oh,
one-house bill. The
Okay, so,
Assembly is declining to go along with that.
okay, so the Senate is willing to allow it in the budget if it's in their
Yes.
one-house bill.
But the
Okay,
Assembly is not. And
got it.
we're making a statement that we want to see it as SWABs. We want to see it fully discussed.
Okay, where's this statement going?
This would go, this is background material, I think, and Rhonda's actually on the call too, if you want to share.
Mhm.
Yeah,
We-
Rob and Matt, please jump in.
We would share it with legislators in the Senate and the Assembly to just let
Okay.
them understand how the SWABs feel. And just a little more background, last year, all SWABs voted to get behind a public hearing where many stakeholders expressed their concerns about the governor's proposal. It's a very similar proposal this year, the governor, that's in her budget. And we, of the many recommendations and cautions that we wrote about, we also asked that it not be in the budget. So this is nothing veering away from our regular, something we've already sort of discussed as SWABs and agreed on. We just decided to, in the interest of time, to get this small part out about it, to get it out of the budget, to just to weigh in on that part of it. And if it's out of the budget and they do discuss it in the legislative process, we also are planning this Thursday and the 23rd to have a full legislative committee meeting that we're combining with the Queen SWAB to look at the legislation of EPR packaging reduction so that we can come to an agreement of a letter of recommendations and cautions that we have. So, but back to the budget, we want the budget to be fully discussed in the light of day and not behind closed doors not the budget, sorry. We want the EPR legislation, packaging reduction, to be discussed in the light of day, but not traded in some backroom deal.
Right, and we are in good company. Ryan, I put up a press release. It's NYPIRG, League of Women Voters, many other, zero waste, cafeteria culture, Surfrider, Beyond Plastics, who are also asking for this. You know, take the best of the best from Senator May, Senator Harcum, and Assembly Member Glick, and, you know, don't do it in a smoke-filled room.
And so let's call Evie as her hand raised. So we'll.
Yeah, my question is, who is championing this in the Senate? Like, to get this in the budget? I'm just curious.
Well, Senator Harcum
Mhm.
wants it in the budget, who has a bill, his own bill in the Senate, one House. Or in
Yeah,
the Senate.
Senator Harcum. Hi, this is Matt from SWAB. Yeah, so Senator Harcum is the primary champion, along with some other members of his committee, to put that in the budget. Senator May has a somewhat different bill, and I don't, you know, that bill is still out there, and it would be nice to take some elements out of that bill, some of the elements out of Harcum's bill, some of the elements, some of the other amendments that have been suggested, and blend that together in the best possible bill that I think we could produce, instead of, you know, hammering out. And that's going to take some time. I don't think that can be done by April 1st.
Right. I mean, this is a new paradigm. It's the implementation of the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. It's a shift for, you know, the next half century. So, you know, taking some time over this and not just having it decided during political horse trading seems like the right thing to do. As somebody who, you know, watched things that we were concerned about at Civics United for Railroad Environmental Solutions go through the 3 or 4 men in a room process under Governor Cuomo, you know, it's not, I don't think anybody wants to go back to that in a different form.
I see Kat has her hand raised. So Kat.
Hi, yeah, thanks. I don't know a lot about this bill. I do know, you know, obviously the huge problem of plastics and failures of the recycling system to take them away and actually recycle them. So that being said, I mean, I would defer to the expertise of people who've been working on it a lot more than I, but my question is, if it's removed from the budget, is there a thought among some of you who know more about this that it will actually have a strong chance of being adopted in some form at you know, a date in the near future? That's really my question. Thank you.
I would love to speak to that, and if anybody else wants to chime in. You know, last year was the same issue. We were fighting to get the bad bill out of the budget, and we did, but we didn't have another bill yet to push. At this point, we have 2 other bills, 3 proposals, because the Glick bill in the Assembly mirrors the Harcum bill in the Senate. So we have 3 very strong bills, whereas last year we didn't have anything to compete with it. So the idea is, if the governor's bill is off the table, that we can wrestle with the 2 very strong, or the 3 very strong bills, or the 2 versions of the very strong bills. I don't see why not. Yeah.
We're on the question though. This just hit me. If you're happy with Harcum's bill, why not let it go through and just amend later?
The question is, what kind of horse trading will happen between Harcum's bill and the governor's bill? And there are some elements of the governor's bill that will roll things backwards. So now we have, you know, just starting January of 2022, we had a styrofoam ban. The governor's bill mentions nothing about eliminating toxics from plastics, Harkham's bill does. May's bill mentions more toxins to get rid of. The governor's bill mentions nothing about environmental justice zones. It mentions in fact, the governor's bill is kind of a giveaway to
Yeah,
producers.
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah, no, the governor's bill is striking this year. It's very different from last year, and it's way worse than it was last year. And I think that was done to force some kind of agreement quickly, perhaps in the budget, and some horse trading back and forth. And you know, I think the bill was so bad though that it kind of backfired, because I think people are like, whoa, this is really terrible. So we kind of want to get as far away from that as possible and give it a lot of time in the light of day.
Yeah.
You know, the best disinfectant is sunlight. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, there's a lot of unhappy people right now with the governor. Let's put it that way.
yes.
I would not want to be her right now.
I feel sorry for her. I'm not,
Yeah.
we should.
Okay.
So those are all the hands. Does anyone else have questions or comments? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve or sign on to the letter?
I'll make the motion that that we sign on. And by the way, the Manhattan and Brooklyn SWABs have already signed on, and Bronx is probably, they're close. So
Second motion.
Great. So we have a motion and a second. Any comments before we vote? Great. So all in favor, say aye.
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 One abstention.
We have one abstention. Is there any noes? No noes. Any other abstentions? So one abstention, rest approved. So the motion passes. Wonderful. That's really great.
okay, and I just want to call everyone's attention to the links in the chat. There'll be a meeting tomorrow and a meeting on the 23rd. Rhonda, can you put in the chat what time the meetings are?
Yes, I'll do that right now.
And everyone's encouraged to attend, because at the end of that, we do intend to take a vote and then ask for an electronic vote from the QSWAB, just to immediately put our new bylaws into place, into action.
Perfect. So why don't we move into the second piece, which I believe, and Matt, you can correct me if I'm wrong, this is for submitting as written testimony as the hearing has already taken place.
Yes, we missed the opportunity to read our testimony, but we can send it in written, and this is what we came up with. We worked on this diligently, and so I'm happy to answer any questions along with Ryan and Ali and I and Rhonda and a couple of other people worked on this. So this is for today's hearing to be read orally, but we didn't make it.
Okay, and this was shared with everyone prior to this meeting. So you do have a copy in your email too.
Now, I will say one thing. Typically, we're in one of the things is the SWABs. All four of us are in a unique position where we are given a good seat at the table now when we give this testimony. We used to be relegated in the back. We were only given 3 minutes, and we used to have to wait till 4 o'clock in the afternoon to testify. We've been given a priority spot, so it's important that we. And what that means is we can read a little bit longer than 3 minutes without being interrupted. And we'll go for, relatively soon into the hearing. So it's important that we all work together. This is why this is a little bit long and a little long, and it's okay. That's the first thing. And the second thing is it's it's important that we all, when we have an opportunity to read as 4 SWABs, so that we use that opportunity, because that gives us, you know, a good seat at the table. So this would be the first example of that, or second example. We've done this once before.
So does anyone have questions about any of this? I believe, again, the Manhattan and Brooklyn SWABs have approved this testimony.
Yes.
Yes.
And we read this into the hearing on behalf of the Manhattan SWAB today. So just briefly, we had to, it was read by somebody who wasn't intending to read it. She gave up her spot to read this. And so, because I couldn't make it down there.
So we would be following up with our participation in written testimony within 72 hours of the hearing as,
Yes.
as an all SWAB letter.
Yes. Or
Okay.
testimony.
Right.
And I see Adam has his hand raised.
Two things. One is, I mean, we've talked about it before here, where we talked about the anti-incineration advocacy. My personal opinion is that advocacy is made in a vacuum, and without a look at a real solid waste master plan to understand what the waste dynamics are in the region. Second, and I think it's an aspirational goal also, since the city has 20-year contracts in place already, that we're not saying, hey, break those contracts and re-sign them. We're just saying burning is bad. So I would prefer more detail if you're advocating for that. And the second is that budget wise, you know, when I looked at the brief today from Tish, it looked like there was like 1.7 billion, 1.8 billion. Like $1 billion of it was labor, and 700 million was for support and, you know, disposal. I think, and I've also talked about before, is that curbside composting is great, but we need some guide rails on how you do that cost effectively. And I think it can be a little dangerous to go all in without looking at efficiencies. And, you know, back in the old days, there was the DSNY white paper, which said when curbside composting, recycling was coming, that there was going to be truck substitution. And, you know, that's a theme that we still need to talk about here. You know, instead of, you know, back with the white paper, it was going from 3 days a week trash collection to 2 days, because you were going to take more material out of the waste stream. We just need to talk about where the money's at in that very, very, very large budget.
Right. So I hate to do this, but can I answer some of those? Do you mind if I answer some of those questions? Take a stab at them? I'm sorry.
Nope.
So for one of the things that we have to understand is that the Department of Sanitation's budget appears on paper to be very large. But if you take, for example, the Department of Education's budget, and you look at it as the national defense spending of any country globally, it would be the 13th largest country on the planet. So it's $30 billion a year. It's more money than the UAE makes in oil revenue. So when we look at $30 billion versus 1.79, it's a drop in the bucket for New York City. What that budget does, though, the 1.7 billion that we spend on sanitation issues, our sanitation services, $478 million of that budget this year will be allocated primarily, almost exclusively, to the burning and burying of trash that is collected in the city that is not recycled. And what's interesting about that number is that back in 2015, when Mayor de Blasio made the aspirational announcement of 0 by 2030, zero waste to landfill, not incineration, because we do have long-term contracts with Covanta. And they are, you know, and a couple of other incineration organizations. We were basically exporting exactly the same amount of tonnage that we are exporting today, about 2.5, 2.6 million tons a year of trash out of the city. Okay, so we haven't moved that needle. But back then, the cost to export that material was 52% less. What do we spend today? I think it's 300 and something million. It has increased 52% since then. And Greg Anderson said today that, this is tied not to volumes on the upside, but tied to inflation. And there cola, steel price, coal, oil, glass, you name it, whatever's in there, it's tied to inflationary indices. And so that's waste export. The commissioner has been very clear that she expects to be running dual trucks on recycling days to pick up the organics. So she feels that same truck routes, new trucks. So we're going to do recycling and organics on the same days and regular trash on regular trash days. Hopefully we'll be able to pull one regular trash day away and substitute a recycling day, because we theoretically will be taking more material out of the waste stream. 41% of what's in those sausage bags are organics by weight. And hopefully if we get 50% reduction in that, is what, that was an aspirational goal that was talked about today in terms of capturing 50% of our organics. That would be lovely. Then we could potentially shift the collection day over. But the final point that I want to make is, which is really, I think, the real crux of all of this, is that forget about the cost of doing all of this, because the cost is there. We understand what the cost is, but we're doing a lot of environmental harm. We are burying and burning organic material that's essentially insane. It's not really, if we're going to, 50% of Manhattan's trash is trucked directly to Essex County, dumped on the floor of the Covanta plant, and then shoved into an incinerator. 41% of that material is organic material. So we got to stop doing that. It's crazy. And the environmental harm is difficult to measure, but the IBO came out with a lovely report back in October of 21 that kind of tried to take a shot at that and figure out what that cost is. And it's fairly substantial. So it's in the tens of millions of dollars. So that's their estimate. So I'm just saying that, the one other thing I will make is that before the city council and the zero waste package is the definition of zero waste to landfill and incineration. So if that law passes, it will put us on the right track to take move away from incineration. And the last point, and I don't want to take up too much time, but the last point is the Department of Sanitation within 30 days or 60 days can change these contracts if they want to. So it isn't like they're in every one of these contracts. I've read these contracts. There are 8 of them. And they are it's in there. It's in every contract. They can, if the Department of Sanitation wants to alter or change a request for change and modification or cancel the contract, they can do that. So
Matt, I think I think you got to the crux of the issue there was that I think you said dollars were no object. And I think going from when we put out 3 million curbside bins and sent trucks all over the place and racked up carbon miles and money, and we didn't do it correctly and the program failed. And it's great that there's some bullet points here in the end where we're talking about, yes, let's fully fund enforcement and education. Those are super important, and I'm really psyched to see those in there. Just, we're operating from a point where DSNY hasn't told us how much it costs to operate that program last fall. And we're operating from a point of weakness in that sense. So my feeling has always been is that we just got to be spot on when we're talking about efficiencies with the collection, because split body packer trucks just mean your garbage routes are less efficient, and it just means you're going to spend more and more on labor. So just got to do it smartly, and we got to be talking about that and asking for more transparency on their costs for those programs.
Yeah, no, we're doing that. I think, you know, we can't, that can't be an impediment to moving forward on a program that we've been trying to put in place for 16 years. And, you know, I think the commissioner has begun to become more and more transparent. There will be, by the way, a whole slew of new data on open data around processing, collection, routes. Let's see how that looks. I haven't looked at it yet, but it's going to be very helpful in our analysis. I certainly don't want to get into a situation where we see something from the Citizens Budget Committee that has some ridiculous number per ton of collection for organics, which is nonsensical. So we've been doing this for some time, and you know, there's an increasing level of confidence that we kind of have a handle on these numbers. So anyway, I don't want to go on, but
Thank you. I see Susan first and then Mary has a hand. So Susan.
So I'm just going to say that I feel like there's momentum now for curbside composting, obviously. And we don't have time to waste. I think that we need to back this. And I think that we should sign on with the other SWABs. And we are not the ones responsible for making the budget or making the decisions or doing the planning, but we can put pressure to try to get the people that are responsible for doing that, for doing all of those things. But we also don't want to promote something and then say yes, but we can also incinerate. So I think it makes sense to include that we also don't think that any diverted materials should be incinerated. So I am fully in support of us signing on to this.
Great, thank you. And then Mary. And you're muted.
The IBO report said that the way to approach this was to ramp up, get as many people on as quickly as possible, and then try to bring the costs down after that, that was the correct approach. So that was a city report a few years ago, I think 2021 maybe. And I agree totally with Susan. I think now's the time. You know, these are the principles that going forward, and certainly the bills for extended producer responsibility, none of them are going for advanced recycling, incineration of plastic, or, you know, incineration is not on anybody's radar screen as a desirable thing to do.
Matt, yeah, and we've talked about this before on the intro 244 mandatory composting. I'm sorry. The intro 244, my issue, as you know, has to do with
enforcement.
Yes. Enforcement and no fines, but first warning before fine. Has the language changed any?
No, it hasn't, but the commissioner has been adamant about this. She does not. This is the big difference between what the DSNY is doing this anyway. The mayor has announced that they're going to do this. So it's going to happen by 2024. The program will be extended curbside to every human being in the city of New York. So put out your bin, put out your material. The stumbling block is if buildings don't want to participate, it's going to be a problem for you and me. You know, we're going to have to handle our own bins, and that's going to be messy and a real problem. So so for enforcement, the commissioner, this is one of the reasons why the commissioner has said she doesn't want people who have never had access to this program to wake up one morning and be held responsible for something that they're completely unfamiliar with. And this is one of the other reasons why she is not pushing mandatory until it's been at least out and in all 5 boroughs for at least some. She's thinking 18 to 24 months after that.
Yeah.
And so that's her. And then Sandy Nurse, on the other hand, is, you know, today's hearing, they talked about this at length. She's like, well, you know, we have to, you know, we do have to have enforcement, and, you know, but I think it's down the road. So I don't think that's something we have to worry about now. But it's
Yeah.
also aimed at large buildings to get them to participate. So that's really where the enforcement is going to be put. you know.
Matt, could
you-
we add some language in here just that would mirror the letter that we already sent to the mayor?
Yeah, we'll pull that right. We could put that in as an amendment. That's
Okay.
fine.
I think that would that satisfy the concern, Andrea?
Yes, it would.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there more?
Yes, I don't see
more
anyone's
discussion? Yeah.
hand. So
I love that. I feel like I come off as being the fiscal conservative, where in my private sector life, I've started programs where I'm like, heck with the budget, let's just make this happen. Except and that's, you know, that's got me to be one of the first collectors of organic material and do some of the first residential curbside compost programs in Massachusetts. I just final vote is that we got to be talking about efficiencies and money, because that's what's going to tank this new program. Is if it bleeds money and people don't participate, we're going to lose it again. And we need to be spot on with thinking about that and asking for that kind of data as the swabs. And maybe that is the crab roll. Is
No,
that
we
get into more
are
of the meat and potatoes about cost of the program.
so the 4 swabs are meeting on a quarterly basis with Commissioner Tisch, and in between we're going to be establishing working groups, and we are asking for data that isn't normally available to the public. We'll see if we get it. The other thing is, I just want to point out, with that $478 million in export costs, we could just simply redirect that to the programs that we are talking about. And there is, you know, originally these programs, and maybe Adam, you remember this back in the day, but a former commissioner, deputy commissioner, sold these programs as big money savers. I think our hope is that they are at best they're going to be P&L neutral, where we're just going to be, as we move material over time, we're going to move budget.
Yeah, it's all about trucking and labor.
Yeah,
that's where the money's at, and that's why you can see that $1 billion for the labor in the budget versus 700 million for quote unquote overhead and export.
Yeah,
more split body trucks means more miles, more carbon miles, more vehicle miles traveled. Just that's why we need to be asking. Show us how much the program cost in Queens per ton last fall, so we understand that.
I think the commissioner mentioned that in today's hearing. I think we have those numbers, so I can dig them out and send them to you in the Q&A.
Great. Perfect. So I think we will have to move on shortly. So is there any discussion or a motion on this agenda item?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Great. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion is seconded. Okay. Any last discussion points before the vote? Okay. Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? We have one abstention. Any opposed? Any other abstentions?
One more abstention.
Great, 2 abstentions. And it looks like the motion passes. Wonderful. So thank you for that. And thank you, Mary, for leading that discussion. I'm going to turn it over to Charles now to talk a little bit about set out times. I have a slide on the changes, but I want to make sure he gets a chance to talk, because he might have to hop early. So Charles, I'll pass it over to you. We can't hear you. Charles, we can't actually hear you. It looks like you're not muted, but I can't.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I have the mute on the computer on. So,
no problem.
Sorry. Thank you, Ryan. Charles Yu from the Long Island City Partnership. We also operate the Business Improvement District in Long Island City. And last summer in August, we actually ran a month-long pilot program with the help of DSNY with 12 businesses on a stretch of our bid on Vernon Boulevard. Basically, it's a test pilot program for the new settle time. And unfortunately, the result have been overwhelmingly unsuccessful for many of our businesses. First of all, I just want to highlight some of the feedback that we've been hearing from businesses. First is the 8 o'clock time just doesn't work for a lot of businesses who that are closing earlier at maybe 4 or 5. And second is the trash cans themselves. During the pilot, it was provided by DSNY for free, but they constantly get stolen or damaged. Businesses were basically contacting us constantly about replacing them. And as I said, during the program, it was provided by DSNY at no cost, but going forward, this would be the replacement would be the responsibility of these businesses. So we're just worried that the cost of it would add to the cost of doing business for a lot of storefronts, and the cans are not cheap. They are, I think, $40-50 per can. So that's if you have to constantly replace them every 2 weeks, that's very expensive. It gets expensive very soon. And also some businesses are telling us they're just simply not enough space in their storefront. Think like a smaller cafe with no seating or minimal seating, and just not enough space to store the cans when they're not being used on the sidewalks to hold their trash. And also when the cans were out, we have pedestrians and residential neighbors just throwing their own trash in the bins, in the commercial bins, which led to problems like overflowing. So there's trash on the sidewalks, but also, some of you may know, commercial trash is being priced out by the pound, basically. So more trash just means more cost for the business. And yeah, these are some of the challenges that we've heard from our local businesses coming out of that pilot program. But I also want to stress that the trash issues that or the trash piling up issues, it's something that businesses do want to see resolved. It's just the pilot program sort of gave us an insight into what will happen if this is implemented more broadly. And so far, there's seems to be a lot of challenges on the business side that we need to at least address or resolve. Don't know exactly what we can do at this point, because I think starting April 1st, it will be implemented. I don't know if there's a chance that we can ask for a delay in enforcement or anything like that, but that's something that we've heard from businesses that I would like to share with the bigger group.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much for that. Does anyone have questions for Charles? I know we had talked last time about having kind of not quite a committee, but a working group to start on commercial issues. So if folks are interested in that or have ideas on how to address some of these, that's also an open question. I know, Charles, you mentioned via email that you all are working outside of SWAB on things, but if we wanted to do something as a SWAB, whether it is a letter, comments to bring to the commission or anything like that, if folks have thoughts.
Yeah, we have sent a letter outlining these issues to the DSNY commissioner, and I think these issues are not isolated. I think other bids, at least the ones in Queens, have similar concerns, and I think the bid association may be doing something. I'm not fully working on that, so I have to double check. But yeah, that's some of the things that we're doing for our businesses at the moment on this issue.
Yeah, we've heard, or I've heard it, the Mr. T Karting side is there's a couple of bids that we're in contact with. They're concerned about two things. One is the mom and pop and the burden of having to figure out how do you go back at 8 o'clock at night when you don't have any storage space designed into your business. And two, a little bit of worry about carts, 65-gallon rollout carts, being out on the street and not having a place where they can bring those carts, because the law is they can't be visible from the street after they've been emptied at nighttime. You know, a third thing that I was surprised of, and because I don't know that much about it, is the residential side where larger buildings were talking about having to change, either hire more people, or because the supers, you know, leave to go 7 to 3, and then they got to figure out, okay, how are we going to hire someone to come back at 8 to take the trash out. Then
That's a problem in my sorry, go ahead.
I did see that the commissioner wants to increase the fine that was brought down to $50 in 2021. And she was advocating in her testimony today to bring that back up to 100, 110. It'll be interesting to see how that goes.
I'm sorry, my video doesn't, there we go. I live in a small co-op in Jackson Heights, and we have a part-time super, and it's changing. It really is problematic for us because that's not normally when he comes. And so it's, and I know that there's several buildings dealing with the same thing. I know also at Queens Public Library, we have custodians who finish at 3 or at 5, and so we're having to change schedules. So my hope is, I mean, I know it's being enacted on April 1st, but if the whole point is to not have rat food sitting outside, if we had curbside composting everywhere, then that would mean that there would be no food or organic items that are sitting in the trash feasibly if everybody did it. So it's not just commercial, it's residential that's having problems as well.
Yeah, definitely. Let me put up, I have this little slide on, this is just from their DSNY's website. They have some policy specific pages. Oh, I see, Walter, you have your hand raised. Let me just show this real quick. This is just, this is showing what the proposed change is starting April 1st. And this is very simplified. So things like the fee change or whatnot's not included in here, but this is the rule that's going into effect April 1st. And the idea is that, you know, putting bags out directly on the curb has to be after 8. You can see some of the changes for residential buildings and businesses if that's containerized, but that's where we get into some of the issues Charles and others were talking about with, you know, the having space for the bags, people putting, or for the containers, people putting additional trash into the containers, increasing costs for businesses, that sort of thing, as well as putting the bins back after they've been collected. Because I believe the other kind of not rule change, but administrative change is that they're going to be picking up earlier, right? So the like around midnight. So I don't know what happens once if they come by and pick up at midnight, what you're supposed to do with the bins, how long they can be out. But this is the change. But I see Walter has his hand raised, so I'll call on him right now.
Yes, my question, talking about April 1st, is they want to start putting the cans out at 6 o'clock with the lid on, and the plastic bags at 8 o'clock. My question is, when the garbage men pick up the pails, they toss the lids, and then you can't find them. They're gone. So my question is, do we need to put a cover on the paper, which is green, and the cans that are blue? Do we need to put covers, or just the garbage one? That's my question.
Yeah. I think in order to put it out at 6, it has to be in a container with the lid. And I
And
think that applies to everything.
And because there's nothing in the paper and the cans that the rats are gonna go for.
Yeah.
The exception is bundled cardboard. You can put that out at the same time that you put out your lidded containers for cans and bottles or trash.
Yeah, I put my paper in a, like my mail and everything in a waste paper basket, and I dump it into a green pail. I don't like tying up my newspapers, but I have all the paper that goes out once a week, and it goes into a green pail, and there's nothing in it but paper. And the cans and bottles, there's nothing in there. They have to be washed. You don't have to scrub them, but they have to be washed before you put them in. They put them out. So there's nothing in the rats are going to go for. So I'm saying, and the lids disappear. I put my lids on, and they're gone. I had to keep buying new ones. So that's my question. I can understand the garbage putting a lid on, but the paper and bottles, I'm trying to understand why.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I know we use the clear plastic bags and it's mainly water bottles. We put that out and we just put out the bag. It's clear plastic bag. We rinse the cans and stuff that goes in there. I don't see the reason it has to be even in a can.
I'm sorry, but the can's not the problem. The problem is the lids. Because and the plastic bags on the bags itself aren't recyclable, and the mice rats eat through the plastic bag.
Yeah, but for me, if it's a bag, you're saying I got to put out my recyclable, my water bottles at 8 o'clock. Is that what I'm hearing? Because it's not in a can.
Yeah.
Listen, if you're going to put out a plastic bag because they can eat through them, you have to put them out at 8. If you're going to put the garbage in a pail, it has to be out by 6.
I've been putting it out all the time. No rat is gonna go for water bottles.
I agree with you. I agree with you. There's nothing in there they want. There's no food in there.
Right.
And they go by the smell. So if you rinse out like you're supposed to, there's nothing to smell. And the paper, I don't think they go for the paper. I know that sometimes they go for the tape, the glue and the tape they nibble on. But I'm talking just paper, the mail, stuff like that.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think the lids, and also it sounded like Charles was saying bins are also going missing. So that's another kind of expense for people.
But also it's like, it's also for businesses, at least it's, you leave the cans out overnight and people sort of just use it as a public trash can.
Yeah.
I say my garbage men take my pail from my side of the street, put it on the opposite side of the street because I got cameras outside my house. And then my neighbor across the street takes my pail and puts it inside. I don't realize you put up 2 and you brought back 3. This is what you have to deal with, It's funny.
I see Vanessa has her hand raised, so I'll call on Vanessa.
Just gonna add, I don't think at this point for the residential change that we do have clarity on
the covering or not covering with a lid based on the information that is not on the slide, but currently on their website, which compares and contrasts the old and new policy where a secure container was previously considered a container with a tied bag inside, regardless. That would have been considered secure even if it didn't have a lid. Very specific, but just to not spread fake information. It doesn't seem to be totally clear yet.
Yeah, thank you for that. Let me see. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Great. I see Mary put a suggestion in the comments there. Are there any other, before we move on, are there any other, I think if people are interested in, I think we could take this on two ways. One is, Charles has been working on the commercial side because they've actually started this with the pilot programs. I don't April 1st, I think, is when most residences are going to be experiencing this for the first time. So, one thing we could do is take on this set out as something we address more generally. The other is specifically looking at commercial, and I think there are slight differences, but similar concerns on both the residential and commercial side. So if folks are interested in this, definitely reach out and let me know. I think that one of the things we talked about at our executive committee meeting was kind of what our next big policies or goals or what our objectives are going to be. So if this is something that people are interested in taking on in any capacity, whether it's giving feedback to DSNY, whether it's educating folks, whether really anything, if this is something that's of interest to people, we can start to fold this into our work. But before that, are there any questions for tonight before we move on?
Well, Ryan, if it's not of interest to residents right now, come April 1, it will be.
Yes.
And I think education is going to be key. So if we could really get clarification on a lot of this stuff, we could at least then publicize it, put it on our, our social media platforms to share, to educate educate the public.
Well, they've got bus stop signs up now.
Oh, okay.
It is really straightforward. If you got bags, it's after 8. Otherwise, you got to containerize it, unless it's a bundle of cardboard.
I don't think they took it.
I would just, basically you can just do whatever you're doing right now after 8. I think that's the idea. Except, on the business side, it's just a little challenging because no one's around after 8 for some businesses.
Yeah, it was a good example of one of the challenges when DSNY engages, so they had in their rulemaking, because they had the hearing, people testified, they expressed their concerns, and then the rule was established. So no sort of formal engagement process with stakeholders, really more decree, which is, it's not like a surprise. And it's a great idea, because if you want to see some rats, you can come out and follow some of our trucks, because we got some incredible hotspots out there.
Wow.
I mean, really crazy, dozens at a time. And the worker safety issues that we have, where they eat through the carts, jump up on the side and eat through the plastic lids. So it's definitely an issue, but just thoughtfulness and engagement, so that they could really hear about the financial stress that small business owners are going to go through.
No, but to your point, Adam, we were, I guess, double shocked, because they actually reached out to us to run a pilot. This is not just, a testimony or, or a public meeting, right? Someone raising this. This is like, a pilot with them, and they asked for it. And these are the challenges, and they're kind of ignoring it. So, it just things don't add up.
I imagine that when more fines happen after the warning period, that's perhaps, we've had people who ask us, who can we complain to? Who do we contact? We want to complain. We tell them to start with their city councilor, and then the mayor's office. But I'm unsure if it's gonna bubble enough to cause any action at the city council level.
Yeah. And that's something, I mean, I don't necessarily want to open us up to be the ones that people are yelling at, but one of our things that we can do is do hearings, and so if we can get DSMY to come, that's one option. If we can pass on messages, as long as we're clear that we're not the ones who are responsible for the changes, that's something that we as a SWAB can facilitate. Is I think many people are not paying attention to what's going on at DSMY across the city, and so April 1st I think is going to be a surprise for a lot of people. And so one of our roles as a SWAB is we can kind of facilitate that discussion. If it's not working for people, that's something that we can help with, the channeling all of the comments that people have to DSMY, and if not DSMY, at least the borough president. So I think that's something we can definitely do. I think we've just gotten a taste of what this looks like from some of the businesses in the pilot program, but as it rolls out to a bigger group, I imagine there'll be things people will want to say, and that's something we can facilitate.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I want to move on because we're a little low on time. We have about 15 minutes. I want to give the committees some time for updates, and then I have some quick updates as well. So why don't we start, Bilal, do you want to start talking about the EJ committee, which I don't think has met yet, but is meeting this week?
Yeah, Friday we're meeting. So the reminder will go out to everyone. I'll send that to you, Ryan, so you can send out a reminder. Friday evening we'll be meeting. But however, we took up one of the other goals of the committee as stated in the Queens Solid Waste report that was put together in reference to collecting and following up with the committee board 7, 12, and 13 chairs in reference to their 311 quality of life issues, specifically like odor issues, illegal dumping, et cetera, et cetera. So we written up a letter to go out to the chairs of those committee boards for them to let us know as a committee what are those issues that they're facing, and to basically take back to committee and to work on recommendations that we can bring back to the body in reference to addressing those issues in 7, 12, and 13. I also followed up with the DEC as it relates to the disadvantaged communities meeting. They were supposed to have a meeting last month in reference to a voting of the criteria. From my knowledge, I followed up with the professor at Queens College, Dr. Zena, and she had any information to share to the committee in reference to that. She said that they had canceled the meeting because of weather and that they were going to reschedule that meeting. So she put me on a thread with the director there, environmental justice there at the DEC, who I've been talking to prior, to basically ask her, when was the rescheduled date for that hearing. She hasn't responded back to that email, so keep everyone abreast. Mary, unless you know when that is, or heard anything about that, I don't have any information about that. And that was our report, basically what we've been working on, the EJ committee.
Yeah, she did not respond, and they have rescheduled it.
Yeah.
I believe is it the 24th, Andrea?
I don't remember offhand. I know I did sign up, but I don't remember offhand what day it is.
Great. Well, thank you for that update. I'm going to pass on to Janet, who just posted in the chat the website coordinator role. Jenny couldn't make it tonight. So Janet, I know you all are meeting tomorrow, so I don't think you've met since the last meeting, but if you want to give an update.
Yeah, no, yeah, tomorrow's our meeting for the communication education. And yeah, I just quickly posted on here, but of course, since we'll also post on like the Google, that way you guys have it in the email as well. But just really, definitely looking for like a website coordinator role. We kind of just finalized, exactly what we're looking for. This is really flexible. This is nothing, too demanding, just like, just touching in on the website just for those few updates when it comes to events or maintenance in general. So if anyone here is interested or may know someone that may be interested in this role, it would be really great. They could reach out. I definitely reach out to Jenny, especially next month, as you guys know, or not know, but I'll be on maternity leave. So I'm trying to do, kind of condense everything together. We're going to kind of comb through a little bit more with Jenny tomorrow. But other than that, I definitely want to see if we get someone, hopefully, for the website coordinator role. And then the mentioning about, updates on the setting the clocks of DSNY, definitely that would be added to our agenda for tomorrow to discuss. Because I did see that on their website, they did post it, but just, I don't know if there was more detailed information. So we'll, fine comb through that as well.
Great, thank you so much. And I know, when we talk about our these new policies, whether it's the restarting of the curbside compost in at least Queens for now, starting up soon, or this new setup rule, our education and communications committee is where I think we can do a lot of strategizing behind like how we want to do outreach and what our messaging wants to be. So if that's of interest to you and you're still looking to plug into a committee, that's definitely an option. Let's see. So Gil, do you have anything from the all SWAB compost meeting?
Well, we talked about a lot. I don't have anything necessarily that needs to be discussed. If there's any specific questions, I can take some.
Yeah, that's great. I'll put up a slide. Part of what I was going to be updating was on the announcement of the rollout here. Let me grab this, which I imagine is what you all talked a lot about. Let me see here. So this is kind of the pre-existing thing that we knew a while ago, was that curbside composting in Queens will be starting up again this month. And we were told at our meeting with the sanitation commissioner that there will be no more pauses. So this pause during the winter was a one-time thing. And once it's picked up again in this month, it won't be pausing again. So that's kind of the update for Queens. And then citywide, their DSMY is rolling out the program that is in Queens. So, conversations around the mandatory and all of that is still going on in City Council, but the program as it exists in Queens will be rolling out citywide to all residents. And these are the dates here. So October of this year, Brooklyn, March of next year, Bronx, Staten Island, and then October of next year, Manhattan. Carol, I see your hand is raised, so I'll go ahead and call on you.
Just to note that we were told, because I'm the chair of the environmental committee on CB4, and we were in contact with DSNY to explore whether or not they'd be willing to do a educational event. And when we talked about doing it on the end of March, they said that they were going to not restart the program till April. So I think it's supposed to be April 1st, but I wouldn't swear to it.
Interesting. I wonder what is the week
That's-
of?
So March, the week that it starts back, I think ends in like the very beginning of April. There was concern, we did talk about, you know, the miscommunication or just kind of like, it's not a lack because there is some communication about the rollout, but it just doesn't seem like very many people, I'm not the rollout, the resuming from the pause. And it just seems like there's, not everybody fully understands when or much about, they're just in, so people are hoping that big reuse can get out to more places. So big reuse is going to be in Queens for the next few months. All the outreach associates are strictly working in Queens. Folks in other boroughs are a little bit upset about that because, you know, people in other places need to learn about this as well. So that, there's also a little bit of misunderstandings when it comes to the smart bins being rolled out. Some folks are like, why are we wasting our money on these other things? And that makes it more confusing. So there's, yes, there's a lot that has been talked about in the organics committee, but I don't know how much of it to really rehash here.
Yeah, no, totally. That's super helpful. I think we do need to get clarification on when the pickup actually starts. And that's something that, you know, as Andrea said earlier, for clarification purposes, what we can do is provide that information to folks. So as we're telling people about the restart, making sure we have the correct information. Yeah, because it only says the
March
week
27th.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
So depending on when your recycling day is, during that, starting on March 27th, some people won't have it till a week later from that. So it will be the beginning of April, depending on, you know, where your block is and what the route is.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. Perfect. So thank you.
Ryan,
Yes.
I just want to bring to your attention that I saw where what's her name? Allison had placed in the chat that people should be encouraged to flood 311 if they have, you know, once this program begins starting when is it, April? Once it begins, that maybe they should flood if they're not happy with having to put out their bags and bins at 8 o'clock, not the bins, the bags at 8 o'clock. You know, maybe they need to call 311. And you know, there's that piece. If you call 311, you can file a complaint with the mayor. You can tell them you want your complaint to go to the mayor, and he will get that complaint also. So maybe that's something to think about. But I just saw she had that in there, so.
Yeah,
wanted to-
thank you for raising that, and thank you, Allison, for putting that in. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good place to start. You know, everything that's submitted to 301 is recorded, and so people look at that, at least for counts. I think, and that's also something that we can be looking at as well, and kind of gauge whether people are complaining, and if there are a lot of complaints, or if people hear there are a lot of complaints, if we want to kind of form a more formalized venue for people to make those complaints. Because I know sometimes 311, you know, people's experience with 311 not resolving an issue may, you know, not make them want to bother, but that's something I think we can definitely send along.
Yeah, and maybe if we can pull it 311 complaints and sort it out by community board, we could maybe target certain CBs that where most of the complaints are coming from.
Yeah.
Just a thought. Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you. And Allison,
Alice,
you're on mute though.
I couldn't find my hand raised thing. Just quickly, I was just gonna add that it's my understanding that in Queens, they're targeting larger buildings this time, where I think last time when they did door to door, they focused more on the smaller buildings. So anybody who has, you know, who knows someone who needs help in a larger building, if they can, you know, possibly help you with some outreach and whatever tactics are needed. Oh, and there was something else I wanted to say. Oh, and we also, I can put it in the chat, a link to it. We ran a, we're doing a Link NYC campaign up in Northern Manhattan where the smart bins kind of launched. So it doesn't really apply to you guys exactly, but it's all about composting really. So, but we were able to get council members to put it in their newsletter. So if I send it to you, put it in the chat. I don't know if you guys have the ability to send it to your various council members, just to promote. It's tied to rats. It basically says, you know, take the rat food out of the trash and into the compost bin. I'll try to put a link in the chat.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Thank you. And I saw Vanessa also put in the chat another option of just sending comments directly to the mayor.
Okay.
As opposed to or in addition to 311. I think it's still useful to do 311 because people do look at that data to see where things are located, but good to have other more direct options as well.
yeah, the city council use it.
Yeah.
They use 311. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, I think it's always a good idea to report things on 311.
Yeah.
Because it for that exact reason is it's a record that this is an issue, whether it's resolved or not. It's a record that there's an issue here. So yeah. We're about at 8. I'll just share really quickly. These are our upcoming meetings, our upcoming committee meetings, and I'll say, oops. Most of what I was going to talk about with the meeting that Matt was talking about with the SWAB chairs and the sanitation commissioner, we talked about a lot of the main points. Her big thing was on the rollout of curbside composting citywide, and we talked a little bit about the city's doing a containerization pilot program, which a report will be coming out soon. For that, and then 2 things which are kind of feeding into our next meeting with her and a working group in between is looking at the waste characterization study, which is being carried out at the moment, and also the solid waste management plan, defining a role for the SWABs on that. So there's no update on that, but we raised that as something we wanted to talk about, and that's kind of going to be our agenda item for the next meeting. So that's what's been going on in those meetings, but rollout of curbside kind of really dominated our conversation, particularly because the other boroughs haven't had this program yet.
Okay.
So are there any last minute questions, comments?
I just put in the chat,
Right.
if you could, please just send the group minutes or notes about those monthly meetings with the commissioner, just so that all of us understand what's going on.
Totally. And Carol, I see your hands raised.
Under the posting for the meetings, the upcoming meetings, environmental justice says it's going to start at 7 p.m. However, when Bilal put the notice on in the chat, he said 8. If they're changing the meeting, I'd like to know now so I don't show up the wrong
Oh
time.
gosh. And Bilal,
I thought it was 6. Oh no.
Yikes. Well, Bilal had to hop off. So why don't I'll confirm with Bilal and follow up very soon because it's on Friday.
Carol, I have it 7 p.m. on my calendar.
I probably do, but it's not, I don't have my calendar up here.
Yeah.
But he put it in the chat earlier, a little earlier when he was talking. He said 8, and I'm like, wait a minute.
8.
I don't remember that being the time.
Yeah.
And I see it's here at 7 also.
Yeah, I'll confirm with that. I thought it was 7 as well. That's what it says on my calendar, but I'll confirm.
Okay.
With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Wonderful. Second?
Second, okay.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Wonderful. Thank you all. This was a really great, I'm so happy that we have the bylaw amendments done. That's a huge, huge thing for us. So thank you all for sticking around and joining us tonight. And I'll follow up with you all.
Yeah, good meeting. Okay.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye-bye.